So I do a lot of small stream trout fishing, and so I wanted to make a video just going over the small stream lures that I use most of the time. This year I made, my bag can carry 4 tackle boxes. Usually I carry my small soft plastics, my spoons, my spinners, and my jerk baits. But instead I sort of just consolidated everything into one tray. So I'll have the one tray on top that has all the main lures that I use. These lures in here are what I'm going to be using like 90% of the time. I'll still probably bring my tray with my small soft plastics, my spoons and my spinners along with this, because again I can take 4, but 90% of the time I'm going to be using the lures that are right in here. And we're talking small streams. We're talking like, 30 feet or less, small mountain streams with wild or stock trout or bass, especially as you get down south. I know, some of the only places you can catch smallmouth are in these smaller streams. I just know from watching videos on the internet, and I've caught a lot of bass on these lures as well, and sometimes I even target the bass. If the trout aren't biting, a lot of times the bass are. There aren't bass in every stream that I fish, but some of them do. Smallmouth and even largemouth, because some of these streams, what they do is they flow through these swamps and or these marshes, and they have pretty good populations of largemouth as well, because the water's a little bit warmer. And you can see these lures are all very small. We really, really want to downsize when we're small stream trout fishing. I go for like the smallest, whatever the smallest spoon or whatever it is I want to buy. I buy the smallest one on the shelf at the tackle box at the bait shop. You really want to downsize, and this absolutely applies to trout fishing in lakes as well. When they first stock them, the stocked trout anyway, especially in the spring, at least here in New York and Pennsylvania, they stock usually these 8 to 12 inch trout, and they're used to eating these little tiny pellets in the hatchery. So if you're throwing anything too big, they just aren't going to eat it. Again, you really got to downsize to catch them most of the time, and you can see some of the lures in here are actually ice fishing lures. At the end of the ice season, I take out everything. I take steal a bunch of lures from my ice fishing tackle box and throw them in here for my small stream trout fishing. So my first go-to lure is absolutely this Phoebe spoon here. These things are absolutely great. I don't know if it's going to focus on it or not, but I got a silver and gold. Those are the main 2 colors that I use. I got 2 silvers in there. The other thing that I really like about these, here's the gold one, is the swivel that they come with. It's probably not going to focus for me, but these swivels that these things come with are great. They're the smallest ones I can find. I've never been able to buy them this small anywhere else. You can buy like the size 14 Eagle Claw ones. They just don't work as well as these ones. When I use these swivels, I tend to catch more fish because, these things are so small, they don't bother the fish at all. And you want to use these swivels. It makes changing lures faster and easier. But the main reason is, these lures, they twist and turn like crazy in the water, and they'll really mess up your line and cost you fish if you don't use them. And that goes for both the spoons and the spinners. Now, I'm definitely a spoon guy. I like using spoons in the small streams, and just in general, a lot better than inline spinners. Just because spinners, there's not as much you can do with them. Spoons are much more versatile. You can throw them upstream and let them float down. You can jig them, you can jerk them. Where spinners, basically all you can do is just reel them in, and you can vary your speed, and that's about it. If the fish is chasing it, all you can really do is vary your speed. With the spoons, you can stop them, you can jerk them, you can bring them to the top and let them fall. You can jig them in place. There's just so much more you can do with them. And spinners, like, you can use them casting upstream and pulling them downstream if you do it really fast. You can get them to spin, but with spoons, it's just a lot easier. And most of the time when you're small stream fishing, you want to work upstream because the fish are facing upstream. That's how they stay forward, upright. So because they're facing that way, you want to target them from the back. And so, I don't know, I just feel like spoons are better for doing that. The other reason is I sort of feel like spinners are more popular, at least in my area. Like, that's the main thing people use to catch small stream fish and to catch the fish after they stock them. So I like throwing things that are just a little bit different. My next go-to spoon is definitely the Castmaster. The 1/16 ounce is my favorite. Again, I go for the smallest ones possible. I actually have one already tied onto my pole, my other 1/16 ounce Castmaster spoon that I have. These ones are 1/8 ounce. I will throw these when I'm, in ponds, just because you can cast them further, and the small stream I feel like the 1/16 ounce is better. But those really small ones, the 1/16 ounce, are actually sort of hard to come by. And you can see they don't need to actually be Castmaster brand either. See, this one here is a real Castmaster brand. This one here is, I think it's an Eagle Claw. I don't even know. It's some knockoff brand. Maybe it's South Bend. And this one's usually a couple bucks cheaper. And you can see it's pretty much the same thing. I do get the Castmaster ones a lot though, just because, again, these spoons are somewhat hard to come by in my area, so I usually have to order them online. But these are great. They work really well as jigging spoons. They work great under the ice, and they cast really, really far, even for their small size. So I really love them. And the fish definitely, you can see the profile of these types of spoons are what I like to use better, more often in the small streams, just because it does a better job of mimicking the bait. The bait in the small streams is usually a more like a soft rayed minnow shape, as opposed to like a shad shape, the bulkier shad shape, like one of these spoons that are rounder. It's a Daredevil, a little Cleo. Obviously I have these in the tackle box, so I do still use them sometimes. But in lakes I like these spoons better because they're rounder and they more mimic, you know, the shad shaped bait that are in there. Or in the small streams, these skinnier spoons do a better job of mimicking the minnow sized, the minnow shaped bait that are in the small streams. So, and just streams in general. The other thing I guess I'll talk briefly about is color. There's really two colors that you want, two things to keep in mind when you're talking about color. When choosing a bait for small stream trout fishing, or really just trout in general. And this rule does apply to bass as well. You hear it a lot, the rule, match the hatch, but when in doubt, freak them out. Usually you want to buy one or two natural colors and then some crazy off-the-wall color. And I don't know why that is, but a lot of times when the fish aren't biting the natural colors, they'll bite something crazy. And I guess it's just because they stick out. These sassy shads here mimic that well. You can see this looks just like a dace. That's the main food source that are in these small streams, at least in my area. They're fish, they're black on the top and white or silver on the bottom. This looks just like a dace. So does this one here. Looks just like a dace. This one's got a little bit more flash to it. And then this looks like absolutely nothing in a small stream. This is just a crazy color. No idea why the fish would, what they think it is, but it sticks out like a sore thumb. It gets a lot of attention, and the fish a lot of times will bite this when they're not biting something that's natural colored. And so usually what you want to do is you want to look on the shelf and just buy one or two natural colored things like gold and silver or black and white, and then one or two lures, you know, spinner, whatever it is you're looking at, spoon, that's something crazy. Like, you know, like this mimics it here. These little Cleos, sort of a natural colored spoon, and then this Daredevil that, I guess it's kind of natural colors, but you know what I mean. When in doubt, freak them out. That's the rule you want to remember. So buy one or two natural colors, and then one or two absolutely crazy out there colors, Fire Tiger or something. We'll move on to spinners. We already talked about these. These I use more actually for targeting bass than trout, but if I'm specifically looking for bigger trout, I will throw a sassy shad as well. They do work. They just do a great job of mimicking a little minnow. Berkeley gulp minnows work good too. Those I don't have in here because you got to keep those in the bags they come with the gulp solution. Spinners, well, here, I guess we'll go with my go-to spinner first of all. Again, I definitely throw spoons most of the time. They're my go-to, but I do throw spinners sometimes too. These little Panther Martins are definitely my favorite because they're so small. And these gold ones are what I do best on. These are my go-to spinner right here. And it's worth it to pay the extra couple bucks and get the genuine gold-plated spinner. These things put off so much flash. I mean, when you see this coming through the water, it's just this giant spiral of flash that this thing puts off. It's really neat to see, and the fish seem to really like it too. I've got one other Panther Martin in here. This one's a white one. Oops. And that one works good too, but definitely do better on the gold most of the time. And then this is probably my second go-to spinner behind the gold Panther Martin is this Blue Fox. I like the blue color. You can see it's caught in some fish. It's got some paint missing on it. Throw the spoon a lot. These ones are relatively inexpensive too. They work really well. I dropped one somewhere. Oh yeah. And that one's just the silver Blue Fox spinner. These Blue Fox spinners, they work great. They spin really well, and they're really cheap. These are what most people throw, at least in my area, are these rooster tails. And obviously people wouldn't throw them if they didn't work. So they do work. Black is my favorite color. This one's a rooster tail, and this one's a Meps. Meps. I don't know if it's an Agliar, but it's a Meps lure of some sort. And these both work. They work great. A lot of guys throw them, which is part of the reason why I don't throw them very much, is just because I like being a little bit different. I mean, once the fish get caught on these a couple times, they're going to learn their lesson. Moving on to, these are some of the things from the ice fishing tackle box here that I stole from ice fishing, that work great in the small streams. Thunderbolt spoon. Actually, this one I haven't used yet, but one of my friends told me, somebody told me that these spoons are absolutely great and that you need to use them. The trout love them. And you can see these are sort of like in between like the shad shaped spoons and like the minnow shaped spoons. So can't wait to try this one, see how it actually works. Here we've got, these are straight from the ice fishing tackle box. You don't want to put these away at the end of ice season because they work great in the small streams as well. These are, what do you call them, Swedish pimples. They work great. The white one's probably my favorite in the small stream. But, I mean, this one's my favorite under the ice. This is my favorite open water fishing. And then the other thing is, these things are absolutely killer for brook trout. They're called mini mites or mighty mites. You can only buy them during the ice season, usually, at least in my area. They're somewhat expensive, and they do snag up. The good news is those hooks are so thin they bend out pretty easy, so you can usually, you know, just bend the hooks and then bend them back if you do get them snagged. These things, man, I was using live bait the one day, and my friend, he just kept nailing brook trout and nailing brook trout and nailing brook trout. Finally, I'm like, dude, what are you using? He was using these things. He's the one who really led me onto these. These things just work excellent. They work for all species of trout, but they work great for brook trout. Better than live bait most of the time. You just pop them in the hole and just, again, you fish them kind of like a, well, you don't really want to jig them, but you just bump them off the bottom. Just a real slight twitch. Most of the time you just cast it out and fish just take it, but if the fish doesn't take it right away, you just twitch your rod tip a couple inches, and it really draws the fish, and then they nail these things. These mighty mites, you can see I got a bunch of them in here. They're really an ice fishing lure. They work great under the ice, but I think they work even better in the small stream trout setting. I mean, the brook trout just eat those things up. The other thing, I didn't talk about my woolly bugger. Gotta have a woolly bugger in there. Most people fish these under a float, but I like to just fish them like a bucktail jig. Again, I just cast them out and bump them off the bottom. I don't use that too often, but I use it sometimes, and the trout do like it. So do the bass and the crappie, actually. Great crappie lure, too. A lot of these can double down as crappie lures. I mean, these Phoebe spoons, the 1/16 ounce Cast Master, these things, Swedish pimples, woolly buggers, these all work great as crappie lures, too. It's another important point to make. These things here, I don't even know what the word is. Most people call them trout worms or whatever. I just call them stupid worms because they look kind of ridiculous. But the fish do love these things. If you want to really piss off the fly fishermen, go to like an artificial lures only area and bring these things. You fish them basically just like you do live bait, and they work almost as good, some days even better than live bait. You can see how I rig them. I got this one rigged here. I've got the hooks to rig them as well. I just use a little Aberdeen hook and just thread them on there just like you would a live bait, just like you would a real worm. This one's rigged here. And these things really work well. And they're really cheap too. A bunch of different brands make them. Berkley makes them. The original ones that I started using were just, they came in with the fishing pole. They're some generic thing, and those ones I actually like better than like the name brand ones that I bought. These ones are like Trout Magnet brand. But they all pretty much work the same. They're pretty much the same thing. And so yeah, that's how I got it rigged. I just got it just threaded on an Aberdeen hook, a thin, small Aberdeen hook. The other way you can rig them that I've been successful with is to dead stick them. You can either use like a weighted jig head or just a regular weightless hook, or even one of these Aberdeen hooks, and you just hook it straight through the middle. And these things work kind of, though when you do it that way, rigging it like wacky style, they'll work just like a Senko and just float down. And some days the fish really like that. Then here we got our, I think we talked about everything over here. So now we get to our crankbaits. You gotta have a weed craw. Those are just a classic. classic small stream trout and bass lure here. Green's my favorite color. I think these are the teeny weeny wheat craws, the smallest wheat craws you can get. The Rebel wheat craws, they work great. I mean, crawfish are in these streams. Again, trout, usually they're going to go for the smaller crawfish, and these look just like a little small crawfish. I'll step it up if I'm specifically fishing for bass. I do have more of these in my crankbait box, but the bigger ones. But in the small stream, I like using the little tiny ones. This thing I haven't used yet. Not the quick fish. Just the KVD square bill. Bitsy. It's called like the Bitsy bill or Bitsy square bill or something like that. I know that square bills work great for getting reaction strikes out of bass, just ramming them into rocks and timber. And small streams are full of rocks and timbers. And so hopefully we can get some reaction strikes with this. Just again running the square bill into stuff and having it deflect off. And hopefully we'll catch some fish on it. I haven't actually tried it yet. Just bought it this winter. It was on sale, so I picked it up. For a couple bucks, why not? These things are also new to my small stream repertoire. Really bought these for steelhead. They work for steelhead, and now I'm looking forward to using them in the small stream. They look like a bug or something. You just cast them out and reel them in, or you can drift them right in the current. You can let them drift down in the current and then stop them, and they'll swim just like that right in the current. They make a lot of very erratic action. They drive the fish crazy, these quick fish lures. You can see these are pretty small, so I'm sure we'll catch fish on these. Got a bunch of those. Again, I bought a bunch of them for steelhead fishing, so I'm going to put these back in my steelhead box, but I put them in here for now to show you guys, because I will use these once steelhead season's over. I'll throw them back into this box. And then you got the original floating Rapala. Cannot beat the original floating Rapala. Again, you can see the match the hatch versus the freak 'em out concept. I mean, this is like a yellow perch color. For the most part, in these small mountain streams, there are no yellow perch, yet for some reason I actually catch more fish on this thing in the small streams than I do on that one. And this one looks exactly like the natural bait. It looks exactly like a dace. It's even got the red nose. I mean, that is what the fish are eating, yet they go after this one for some reason. I don't know why. Freaks them out. But you can put some weight in front of these things and just twitch them in the current. You can reel them in just like a crankbait. If you have a big enough hole, what I like to do is I fish them like a popper. I just jerk them and then let them float to the surface, and jerk them and then let them float to the surface. And it's real subtle. It's not like a real popper that creates a big kaploosh. It's just a very subtle commotion that it creates, and that's what these fish are used to seeing. And man, they'll just slam it. Love the original floating Rapala. These are size 5. Again, one of the small. I think the smallest or the second smallest size you can get. So that's everything in here. One last thing I want to show you. You've probably heard of if you're familiar at all with small stream trout fishing, or trout fishing at all, and that are these trout magnets that are really sort of taking the world by storm. They're being called like the Cinco of trout fishing, and they work pretty great. I just bought this kit. I did have, all I've had up until this point were the white ones and the pink ones, and they both worked good. Again, you can see the match the hatch versus freak 'em out concept here. Right here are your match the hatch colors. I mean, these are what the fish are going to be seeing in the streams. It looks like a bug or something. That looks exactly like larva. It's the most natural color. Again, your gold's a natural color that looks like the bait fishing bugs or whatever. That's sort of your in-between, your transition color, and then these things. I mean, there's nothing in the small streams that look crazy like this yet. You know, if you watch the actual videos that Trout Magnet has on the internet, the day they were using them, these were the color that they're homing in on. And these things work great. It tells you right here how to use them. I prefer the second method, actually, that not as many people use, which is basically fishing them the same way that I explained those Mighty Mites. Same method. The other method is to use a float. And again, you can watch videos how to do that on the internet. That's how most people fish them. I like to use fluorocarbon line when I'm in the small stream, just because it doesn't freak the fish out. Plus, I don't like having to tie leaders all day because I usually get snagged up a lot, especially when I'm fishing with bait, with live bait. So I like just using fluorocarbon line, which doesn't work well for float fishing. And also, I don't know, I just don't like float fishing in small streams. So I like using method 2, but method 1 obviously works, using the float. And it comes with these hooks. It comes with everything you need. And very easy to rig, very easy to use. Fish absolutely love them. If they aren't biting on one color, you can just switch to another color. Again, these things are really sort of cheating if you're in an artificial lures only section, because they work just as good, if not better, than live bait most of the time. Really great lures. It's really worth it, and they're not too expensive either. This kit here was $10, and that was at the local bait shop. If I ordered online, it'd probably even be a couple bucks cheaper. And this will last me forever. I mean, these things last a really long time. It's pretty durable. And then buying them separately, like buying a package of just the whites, and even if you just buy them separately, just a package, it comes with a couple of hooks as well to rig them, and that's just like a couple bucks. It's like $2 or something like that. Not a bad deal at all. And these things are really worth the money, trust me. Again, you can watch whole videos on them. They're sort of taking the trout fishing world by storm. So this here is what I'm going to be using in the small stream about 90% of the time. So yeah, buy a couple of these lures, try them out. Again, my go-tos are definitely these thin spoons, the Phoebes, the Cast Masters, and then probably the Trout Magnet. And so yeah, that's everything. Hopefully you learned something. Thanks for watching.